I'm not gonna lie, I just finished recording this entire video only to realize that I forgot to hit the record button. So that's fun. Alright, resuming. This movie was impressively awful, honestly, and I had the time of my life watching it. So obviously a lot of people are pissed about this movie, but 3 years ago I kind of felt like I was in the minority of hating the first one. In my opinion, it was not good. I did not like it. I thought it was pretty stupid. And when I would express these thoughts, I would more often than not get yelled at, and people would get really upset. Similarly with my criticisms against Captain Marvel. They don't like it when you criminalize a female superhero because they've been fighting so long for one that even though these movies have things in them that are not great, it is almost like people think they are beyond criticism just because they finally have a woman in them as a superhero. So when I heard that a second Wonder Woman movie was coming out, I was fairly certain it was going to be bad as well. I was pretty sure I knew what I was going to get, but then when the reviews started pouring in, and everybody else seemed to hate it, I felt a little bit justified about my opinions on the first film. And I really did think I knew what I was in for. But oh man, turns out I had no idea what I was in for. I was expecting a bad movie. What I got was one of the biggest train wrecks I have ever had the pleasure of witnessing on a big screen. So what exactly is this movie? What even happens in it? Excellent question. This movie starts how all DC movies seem to start, voiceover narration with a clip from the past, which I get why they want this in this movie specifically. They have this backstory of these super awesome Amazon women who can do anything on an island made up only of them. Like, I would like to show that too. I want to see that. But it's so off tonally and story-wise from the rest of this movie. The whole voiceover is just this thing of Diana saying, like, you will become who you are meant to be, and it's very reminiscent of her childhood and nostalgic for it, but like, none of that has to do with this movie or anything that happens in it. The whole scene that's shown is her competing in this like uber competition of the Amazons, but as a child, where most of them are like grown women, and she's winning, just totally leaving everyone in the dust until she looks behind her on her horse and gets knocked off of it. But then she finds a slide, she slides down this hill, she lands back onto her horse and is able to finish the race. But because of the way that she did it, even though she would have come in first somehow, her mentor, Ant Lady, stops her so she doesn't finish the race, and she's very upset about it. And I guess that could be about everything that's to come later. The whole thing that like tricks aren't the truth, you can't use them, whatever, but like it only kind of fits. And this whole scene is so drawn out and is never brought back up, and it's fine, I guess it's fine. But it also highlights a huge problem with the Wonder Woman character, and that is that she was born perfect. She is perfect and she will die perfect. Even as a little kid, she was able to beat grown women in competitions. Like, she's a fine character, but we never see her have to fight or grow ever. And that's not easy to empathize with as a person watching a movie. Like, yeah, I can look and go, she's so cool, she's so hot, wish I could be her, but there's no realism to her struggles. Even as the movie continues and she loses her strength for a bit, she never has to work to get it back. It's just a thing she has always. No improvements are ever necessary. And the whole intention of the scene is to highlight that little cheating bit that she did, and that trickery is wrong, but the trickery here is miles away from the trickery that comes later, so it's fine. It's not good, it's fine. Like, it doesn't entirely fit what they're trying to say, but it does enough, I guess, and I'll leave it at that. But really, this whole scene is just to show you some golden statue for like 2 seconds that comes in later, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Now, it's 1984. Wonder Woman has become a cultural anthropologist at a museum in Washington, D.C. Her identity as Wonder Woman is kind of a secret. Nobody really knows who she is or what Wonder Woman even is. And even though it's been a long-ass time, she is still completely held up on Steve the pilot from the last movie. And he didn't need to die in the last movie either. I really want that to be clear. But he did it anyways for the lulz, I guess. I mean it. I didn't feel anything other than confusion and frustration watching that scene where he dies. It was so unnecessary. He was above water. He could have just jumped out of the plane. He could have just left the plane. It would have blown up just fine without him. But I guess he had to go all Captain America on our asses, because DC still hasn't figured out that copying the Marvel Cinematic Universe but doing everything worse isn't working for them. But yes, she's remained single for the last 40 plus years, and absolutely refuses to move on from the first guy she ever dated, first guy she ever even met, and the guy that she only knew for a couple of weeks. But anyways, in her free time, Wonder Woman seems to know where every crime is happening at any given point in time with her never before brought up spidey sense or whatever. And because of this just knowledge of things, she shows up at a mall where a heist is happening. And I am kind of slow to call it a heist because you have to understand that whatever is happening is being put on by the world's dumbest criminals. One of them thinks dangling a little girl over the edge of a balcony is going to somehow get him out of the situation instead of put him further into the situation after they get caught. But hey, it gives Wonder Woman a moment to be all heroic and superhero to little girls, so I guess it had to happen. Within this whole heist situation, like, these guys are acting so idiotic. It is absolutely insane. One of the guys drops his gun and then kicks it, and then a woman sees it and goes, oh my gosh, there's a gun. And then he's like, basically admits like, oh, I'm stealing stuff, and grabs a little girl, and it's just all chaotic. It doesn't make any sense. But while that's happening, like, the other guys who have helped take the heist, like, they could just walk out of the situation. Like, nobody really knows that they're connected to it yet. Like, they could just leave and pretend that they didn't know that guy. But instead they're like shouting at each other across the mall that they're all in on it. Like, they're like, hey, no, over here, like, do this over. Like, they admit to everyone that they're part of this thing that's going on here and part of the reason why everybody's in danger, and then they put themselves in danger, and there's no reason for it. They could have just left. I don't understand why they're so stupid. But despite that level of stupidity and the fact that, like, Wonder Woman is supposed to be this extreme, powerful, perfect person who can do literally anything she puts her mind to, it takes her an absurdly long amount of time to apprehend them. And this is when I knew I was in trouble with this movie, because this is an action movie. This is a superhero movie. Literally the bare minimum requirement for a superhero movie is to have good action in it, and the action in this movie sucks. It's always her against like multiple foes, you know? And so like she'll be fighting one person, and then she'll like turn around and start fighting the other person, and then she'll turn back to fight the first person again, and like they're still exactly where she left them. Like, they don't make any attempts to hurt her or run away or anything. They're just waiting to get their asses kicked. And she does a lot of like these like floaty jump things, and they just don't look right. I think that she's supposed to be jumping, you know? But even if she was like floating or something, it just looks awkward. Like, it doesn't look like she's moving how she would be moving if that was happening, you know? Like, she lands weird, she floats weird. It looks odd. It looks like it was edited wrong. And it makes her movements look really cartoony. In fact, a lot of parts in these action scenes just look super, super cartoony and super slow too. Like, people are intentionally moving very slow so that she can get them easier or fight them easier. Like, it looks like a staged fight. It looks like something you might see in like a low-tier theater production, not in a extremely high-budget superhero movie. And also, she like just jumps around like Mario all the time. Like, she's just bouncing everywhere. And I don't understand, because she's literally this immortal, bulletproof superwoman person thing. She doesn't need to jump around all the time. Like, who cares if they shoot her? It's not going to do anything. Like, just grab them. Just grab them and toss them.
Grab them and toss them.
You don't have to dance around them all the time. But of course she gets them in the end, and then she drops them on a police car and just like demolishes it. And like the thing is like, if anybody was in that police car, which I don't know if she would have had a way to know, they're dead now.
Carl, that kills people.
Wow, I didn't know that.
How could you not know that?
Yeah, I'm in the wrong here. I suck.
But that goes like right into that perfect like DC fashion of like, I don't kill people, but then like you cause like mass destruction all over a city. Like, it's not going to result in some people dying.
Carl, that kills people.
As she gets home from her adventure, we hear the TV talk about how there's been a mysterious woman that's been showing up on crime scenes all over the area and has been stopping them and saving people, and like, wow. And they mentioned that it's been 16 times that this has happened, and it's been 40 plus years. How in the world has it only been 16 times? And that is when we meet this lady. I think her actress's name is Kristen Wiig in the movie. I think her name's Barbara? I'm really bad at names. We meet her in this like scene where she's walking into the office and she just drops her stuff everywhere, and then like she's like asking for help and everybody's just like ignoring her and walking past her because, you know, like she's clumsy and klutzy and quirky and awkward, you know? But of course Wonder Woman shows up and helps her because she's like the perfect person. And just by doing this, like, this Barbara lady becomes immediately like obsessed with her, and it's like supposed to be written off on like this like envious front, like, oh, like she's so taken by her because she's envious, she wants to be her, which like totally buy it. That is what happens in the rest of the movie. That is what was supposed to be happening in the scene. But the way it comes across in this scene is very homoerotic. Like, it very much seems like she has fallen for this girl. Like, she sees her and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm in love. Like, it's, I don't know, that's just how it was acted to me. That's how it seemed. I was a little confused as to where they were going, because like, come on, if Marvel's not gonna do it, would you really do it, DC? But that's not how it's played for the rest of the movie, so I guess that's not what they were going for. But their boss shows up and says that in the heist thing, a bunch of artifacts were discovered in the back of like this diamond store, and that the FBI wants the museum to look at them, especially Barbara, because she's a geologist of some sort, and identify them for the FBI. So Diana becomes interested in this because she's like, oh, that's the heist that I was involved in. And immediately is like, yeah, friends, right? We can go to lunch and stuff, even though that was not her intentions before, which is a little not great on Diana's part. It comes across a little manipulative. But they're looking over the artifacts, and Wonder Woman's asking questions, especially about this one that she picks up. She's like, what's this? And Barbara is like, oh, if you read the inscription around it, it says that it's like a wish stone, like if you wish on it, your wishes will come true kind of thing. And so Diana like holds it up and is like looking at it, and she goes, I know what I would wish for. And then like this cartoony like wind effect thing happens in her hair. And that like happens a lot in this movie, like an absurd amount of times does this like cartoony like wind thing happen, and I don't get it. Like it's to show that like a wish has been granted or whatever, but there are just so many less stupid ways that you could have tried to convey that other than wind, like a freaking like shampoo commercial every single time someone makes a wish. And then this is when the Mandalorian shows up. In this movie, he is a wealthy man who very suddenly donates a ton of money to the museum. But of course, rich man has ulterior motives. He knows about the stone. Apparently he's done a bunch of research about it, and he knows that it's there, and he wants it. And gets it, he does. I have to mention all of this because it was just very much like a whole like, were these writers drunk the entire time they were making this movie kind of thing? And honestly, there are more moments of these than there are not in this movie. But before Mandalorian man shows up, Barbara has the stone in her office, and she's looking it over, and she like holds it up, and she like wishes that she was more like Diana. She wishes that she was like Diana, you know, cool and sophisticated, a bunch of other weird adjectives that again make it sound like she's totally in love with her. And then the cartoony wind hair effect thing happens, and then she falls asleep in her office. When she wakes up, she notices that she can't see with her glasses anymore, so she takes off her glasses and she looks down, and her skirt, I think she spilled something on her skirt, so she takes off her skirt and she pulls her like shirt, which is like this bunched up mass of 80s-ness, she pulls it down like a dress, so it's like the short dress. And that's all it takes. Now she's hot in perfect Hollywood fashion. Take off the glasses, show some legs, you're hot now. Which is like fine, I guess. It's just a super outdated trope that I did not expect to see here. Like, when was the last time that anyone has seen that in a movie recently where it wasn't the gag or the joke? You know, like it's so outdated. Like people just use it to make fun of it. Nobody wants to see it. Nobody takes it seriously anymore. Like as soon as you use that in like a serious manner, you lose so much credibility as like somebody who's telling a story. And this was no low budget Hallmark movie either. This was a super intense budgeted superhero movie. And more than that, it was a superhero movie about like female empowerment and female superheroes. What the hell was this doing in here? Was this movie written by drunk toddlers? So anyway, I don't wear glasses anymore, so I'm hot now, lady, is being targeted by the Mandalorian guy, but like in a like I'm gonna seduce her to get what I want kind of way. So they are in her office at a party, and he like points out the stone as they're making out, and he's like, oh, what's that? So she tells him, even though he already knows, like it's already established that he knows what the stone is, so I don't understand why he would draw attention to the thing that he's about to steal, because that's what he does while they're making out. He grabs it off the desk in like the super like cartoony manner, he like grabs it, he like holds it behind his back, like displaying it to the camera, which is fine and all, but then in the next scene that we see Barbara, and she tells Diane that she let him borrow it, which is not what we were shown. We were definitely shown him stealing it, and I don't know what happened there. I don't know if there was a scene that got cut out of like her catching him trying to steal it, and then he was like, oh, I just wanted to borrow it, and then she let him, or if the writers just totally forgot that they wrote that. Like, I don't know what happened there. So Max Lord, that's the Mandalorian guy, he goes back to his office and he has the stone, and he is in charge of this huge failing oil company, and so obviously he wants to use the stone to get oil in the places where he has land so that he could become rich and successful and prove himself to the world and to his son. But instead of wishing for that, he wishes to become the stone himself. So Diana's still at the party, looking for Max Lord, who I think at this precise moment in time is still hooking up with Barbara in the office, and she's looking for Max Lord because she suspects that he might have ulterior motives. While she's looking for him, she runs into a strange man who says her name. Now, this scene pissed me off because of just how anticlimactic it was. He calls her name and she's like, I don't know who you are, and then he says something to her. I think it was the last thing that he said to her before he died, and then she's just immediately like, oh my god, it's you, and kisses him, and then she can see him for him because he, Steve, is low-key possessing the body of this guy, and so after they kiss, like, she just sees him as Steve, so like we see him as Steve, but like the entire time he is supposed to be like this guy that just is now Steve. I didn't like it. I don't know why they had to do the whole like he's possessing somebody else's body thing. Like, it doesn't really come up in the plot ever again. I feel like they could have cut those scenes out and then put in a lot more scenes that make the plot make sense, but it's in there, so I guess we just have to roll with it. But even more than that, like this whole scene, like what it was versus what it could have been, it really was just boring. I love resurrection scenes. They give me chills like most of the time. Like even in The Lord of the Rings and the Twin Towers, when Aragorn dies like 3 times in one movie, like he just keeps dying and then they're like, oh, he's back. Like every single one of those, as stupid as they are, because they are stupid, there's like the worst part of the movie, I love it. I love watching like characters' reactions to like thinking that somebody was gone and then they're back. Like I love that so much. It brings me life. But like in this movie, it was just so boring and lame, and it didn't need to be at all. Like, I don't understand why she just accepted it and then kissed him, and like why it was so boring and why they didn't talk about it more. Like, it was just, it was so dull, and it could have been so good. Whatever. At this point, it's kind of alright for a little bit with the movie. It's like 1940s Steve, and he's now in the 1980s, and so everything's new and different, and he's cute and weird, and he doesn't really know what anything is. Diana's showing him around, and you know, it's fine for what it is. I enjoyed this part. It was cute. Honestly, they deserved a better movie. Now that Max Lord is the stone, he keeps running around tricking people into making wishes that he wants them to make, and in doing this, he gets oil in all of the parts of land that he owns, and he gets rid of his investors, and he decides to go to the Middle East to take over the oil industry there. At this point, some rules seem to be established with this whole like wish-making business. Like, he needs to be touching a person and they need to say the wish out loud, which brings me back to what Diana did, where she just kind of held it and was like, I know what I would wish for. She didn't do that. Like, yeah, she touched it, but she didn't say what she wanted, so how does she have Steve? How is he alive? Like, movie, if you're gonna make rules, you gotta follow them. But anyways, Diana suspects that the stone is what brought her lover back, and also thinks that Barbara may have used it because she's now, you know, pretty and hot and wears makeup. I don't know, movie rules of what makes women attractive. So her, Steve, and Barbara do some research, and they discover that the stone belongs to this god that's apparently the god of like tricks and lies. And while it gives you what you want, it will take something else from you. And also, every single society that the stone has come up in has fallen apart shortly afterwards. So the end is near. That is now the stakes. That is where we are in the movie. But neither Diana nor Barbara are willing to renounce their wishes, which I guess is enough to make them go away. They never really explain that. It just is like, oh, yeah, that's something that can happen. Like, if you renounce your wish, it'll go away. And I'm trying to figure out like how they decide what's the difference between like a genuine renouncement and just getting like frustrated with the situation. Like, if you're like, this sucks, like I don't know if I want this anymore, would that renounce your wish, or do you like have to say the words like, I renounce this wish? It's weird. It's weird that would even work if like the whole goal of the stone was to cause like mass destruction. Why would there ever be such an easy way out of any situation that you could create with it? You just have to be like, nah, never mind, I don't want to do this anymore, and then it's over. That's it. There's a scene around this point where Diana and Steve steal a plane, and they steal this plane because Steve can't fly because he doesn't have a passport. But the thing with that is like, he's in somebody else's body. Like, what if that guy had a passport? Like, why don't you just go check? Like, maybe he has a passport. Like, yes, we see him as Steve, but everybody else sees him as this other guy because that's the body that he's possessing. So you could totally go through an airport. But anyway, they just decide to steal a jet from the museum, and luckily it is fully fueled and ready to go. And they're doing all of this to go to the Middle East to stop Max Lord. As they are stealing the plane, obviously people are trying to stop them, and it's like, oh no, satellites, they'll be able to see where we are, like we're gonna get in trouble kind of thing. And then Diana is very suddenly like, oh wait, I just remembered, I can make things invisible. A power I have never been shown to have before this exact moment in either of these movies that I've been in. But yeah, I once made a coffee cup invisible, so I could probably make this plane invisible too. And then she does. One scene of her using this power, developing this power, accidentally using this power. That's all you need. And it would still be cheap, but it would work. But this, like just like this random, like, oh yeah, I could totally do this random thing I've never been shown to be able to do before. That's just cheating. That is storytelling cheating. They go to the Middle East, Max Lord gets all the oil, and then a car chase begins as Steve and Diana like find him. And as the car chase is coming to an end, there's like 3 children playing in the middle of the road, of course, and so Diana like jumps up and tries to save them, but she's getting weak for some reason. Like, she can get hurt now and she's weakened. So as she's like flying through the air, she like tries to wrap her lasso around something and she misses, and she just falls into the pavement holding these 3 kids and like wipes out. And then and then Steve stops like the cars from hitting her and stuff, and it's okay. And then the children just like jump up and run back to their parents, and it's like, those kids, at the very least, should have extreme road burn. And they're just like running off. They're fine. They're totally good. Movie rules, I guess. But this is where it's established that Diana is losing her powers because apparently, for her wish, that is the thing that's going to be taken from her. Back in the US, Max Lord goes to the president using people's wishes that he tricks them into making, and learns of a satellite system with global broadcasting in cases of like extreme emergencies. And his health is drastically deteriorating with the use of the stone. Like, it wasn't built to be held within a person, I guess. And so he decides that he can use the waves of the signals, which will technically be touching people, to broadcast that they can make wishes, and then when people make wishes, he will make the catch their health, so he can get his health back. Diana and Steve show up and almost get him, but then Barbara shows up and decides that she's going to be on his side, so she fights Diana, and since Diana is getting weaker, she wins, and then her and Max jump in a plane and decide to fly off to the global broadcasting system. Now, aligned with Max, Barbara, in the most awkward exchange of dialogue I had heard yet in this movie, says this whole thing about how she wants to be more than Diana. She doesn't want to just be Diana. She wants to be better. And Max decides that he can grant her another wish, even though that has been clearly established that he cannot do that. Like, you get one wish, or whatever. And so she decides that she's going to wish to be an apex predator. I don't understand, because everybody knows you need to be very specific in your wishes, and how did she know that she was not going to turn into a cat? The world is falling apart at this point. People have made lots of wishes, lots is going on, lots of protests. The end is near, so it seems. And so Steve convinces Diana to renounce her wish and let him die again, so that she can have the power to fight and beat Barbara and Max. And this is a super dramatic scene, very sad, could move me to tears, you know, but in the background is an orchestra, you know, music, you know, for added sadness, which is fine, that's pretty typical. Except in this scene specifically, the music is so loud you can barely hear the actors talking. And I have a theory about this actually. It's because this happens a lot in this movie, where something will be happening and the music is just so loud in the background. And I think that in the last stage, the editors were going through the movie and they realized that the dialogue is garbage in every scene, especially the ones that are supposed to be super emotional, like this one. And so in a last-ditch effort to try and save the movie, they turned the music volume up as high as they could without getting in trouble, and hope to God that people would just stop listening to the dialogue. I mean, it is sad, it should be sad, and honestly, just because of the music alone, like, I was ready to cry, but the dialogue is so bad. And so it was a mixture of, like, I feel like I need to be crying right now, but I'm also laughing. So Diana renounces her wish and jumps off into the sky, where she begins to fly for the first time. She takes flight, as it were. And it's very obvious from what has just happened and what is happening and what has happened in the movie up until this point, that at this point she is recalling Steve, I almost forgot his name, Steve, and is remembering what he told to her in the jet, which is this whole scene where he was talking to her about how much he loves flying and like what it means to him and what it feels like to be flying. And it's very easy to put into your mind that that's what is going through her head right now, just from the way it's filmed and the way she's looking and how sad she is. Like, it all makes sense. But apparently the movie makers didn't think that the audience was smart enough to make that jump, and so there's just a voiceover of what Steve said not even that long ago just playing over the scene, and it's just ruins the emotional impact of it. But more than that, it's stupid because we literally just heard him say that not too long ago and you don't need to reiterate it. Earlier at her place, she showed Steve like this gold armor that she had in this room. It's like this huge armor, and she told him that it belonged to this Amazon warrior who sacrificed herself to save everyone else. And so they all put their armor together into this one armor so that she could be strong enough with it to hold off an army while everybody else escaped. And so they like really respect her, and they really like admire her and stuff. And so now she has the armor. But when did Diana get this armor? Because she didn't have it in the first movie at all. She did not bring it from the island with her with Steve in the last movie. She has not been back to the island in any capacity that we have been alerted to. So where the hell did she get it? Anyways, she gets this armor, she puts it on, she prepares for the climax. As Max starts his worldwide broadcast telling everybody that if they just make wishes, like, it'll all come true, and wishes start pouring in, especially a lot of wishes for missiles. A lot of people wish for missiles. Now, Barbara, who is a cat lady, guards the exit and ends up battling Diana for entrance into this broadcasting station. Now, all that build up with the armor to sell more toys, of course, and all of the backstory and everything about it and how it's supposed to be like the strongest armor ever made, it's destroyed in a couple of minutes. Barbara tears it to shreds almost immediately. It's gone. And Diana is trying to get Barbara to renounce her wish while Barbara is very noticeably kicking her butt, and Barbara won't, so Diana plunges her into water and then electrocutes the crap out of her.
Carl, that kills people.
And honestly, I thought that she murdered her. I thought she'd killed her. In any other movie or situation, she would be dead. But because I guess DC heroes can't kill people, she's not. She's fine. It's okay. But with new missiles popping up all over the globe, every country starts getting nervous and starts preparing to fire their missiles at each other. Max can't be reasoned with, and Diana cannot get to him because there's like this wind that's going around him that's like keeping her away, I guess. And so she uses her lasso of truth and she like gets it around his ankle or whatever. And so I guess now what he's showing the world is the truth. Like, everybody sees the truth now. And because of this, she gives this like little speech, and I don't know how anybody hears her because she's like whispering it, like you can barely hear her because of the music again. And somehow manages to convince every single person in the entire world to renounce their wish, which is impossible, honestly. Like, I don't care if you show most people the truth, they're still not going to believe it. And even if they do believe it, like even if they can see that it's the truth, they will still proceed with the intentions of trying to avoid that future, you know? Like, if you're like, this is what's going to happen if you get what you want. Most people are still going to take what they want and then try and actively avoid what's going to happen. And even if you tell most people like, oh, the world will end if you accept this thing, people are very selfish. You're telling me that not even a handful of people would have been like, yeah, I'm just going to keep what I want and hope for the best. But nope. every person renounces their wish, every single last one of them. And all of these missiles that flying at each other from all directions, from all countries, they just disappear because the wishes are now gone. Everybody renounced them, so the missiles don't exist anymore. But, you are telling me that every single missile was a wish missile? Every single missile that was flying at a country, at a place, all of them were wish missiles. Not a single one was a pre-existing missile. Not even one. Even if all the wish missiles disappeared, the original missiles that countries definitely had should still be flying at each other, about to cause World War III and the end of life as we know it on this planet. But not a single one does. And also, just kind of a side note question, since like everybody in the whole world was making wishes, what happens if like two people make wishes that contradict each other? What if two different countries wish at the same time that they want the most missiles in the whole world? Like, how does that work? Like, who gets the wish? Who doesn't get the wish? But with the lasso of truth, revealing the truth, everybody renounces their wishes, all the missiles go away, the end of the world is avoided, and Max Lord realizes his mistakes, and I think he renounces his own wish. And like the stone and everything, so he's no longer the stone. And it's just really weird to me how easy it is to escape all of the bad things that have been brought up. Like, usually when there's like a conflict in a movie, it's not as easy as being like, I wish I didn't wish that wish in order to like resolve everything, but here it is. So free of his wishes and everything that he did, Max Lord runs off to go find his son. And yes, he has a son in this movie. And I have a few things to say about the son. First of all, he just shows up places. Like, he just is randomly in the office at times. He's never shown with like a nanny or a caretaker or a mother or like anybody. He just ends up being where he's supposed to be with his dad. And like, his dad doesn't take care of him. Like, that is very established that like his father sucks at being a father in this movie, because like coming up with new motivations for a character is too hard for DC. So like, who is taking care of this kid? Who is getting this kid from place to place? And when the whole world goes to crap, this kid just runs off. Like, nobody cares where this kid is. He has nobody looking out for him. He has nobody who's in charge of him. He's like 8, I think. I'm really bad at judging like the age of children, but I think he's around 8. Like, what is he doing? Why isn't anybody taking care of this kid? Second, this actor, Pedro Pascal, love this man. Beautiful man, wonderful man, glorious man, deserved so much better than all of this, but he is Chilean American. In this movie, they did a lot to make him look white, in my opinion. In this movie, he has blonde hair and he's presented as a lot paler in complexion than he typically is in his other work and also just in real life. And honestly, this like really could have been a comment on like how as a Latin American person in the 1980s, you'd have to conform so heavily and code switch so much to become and be considered like a successful person. Like, that could have been what they were going for, you know, like a comment on that. But there's no scenes or like exchanges of dialogue or anything that bring any of that up. So it just looks like they whitewashed him. But even more so, like, his son in this movie is played by an obviously Latin kid, so why is Max Lord blonde and pale? Third, all of this, everything that we've seen, this whole movie, that whole end scene, him running to find his son, him having a son, it all leads to this one moment. It is the most magnificent exchange of dialogue I have ever seen in all of cinematic history that I have been witness to.
I'm not a great guy. In fact, I'm a pretty messed up loser guy.
I was almost in tears in the movie theater. I was laughing so hard after he said this. I forgot to mention this in like my initial recording, but there's also a scene like right before this where they give all these flashbacks and stuff to Max Lord as if they're trying to redeem him last minute. And it's a very bizarre attempt to try and redeem a character who has been, you know, about to cause the end of the world just a little bit ago. But in doing so, how they try to do that is they just show flashbacks of this kid that is Max Lord in like this less than ideal family situation. And I guess it's supposed to make you like feel for him or feel bad for him or whatever, but all it really does is make me very concerned, because in those flashbacks he presented a lot of signs that people have when they're going to be serial killers, like wetting the bed and abusive fathers, and I don't know how I feel about that at all.
I'm not a great guy. In fact, I'm a pretty messed up loser guy.
I cannot stress enough just how bad the dialogue in this movie is. Like, this is definitely the worst of it, but everything is just like a little bit below it in terms of being awful. Like, just like a little bit. That is the quality of the entire movie's dialogue. So the movie ends as Diane ends up running into the guy that Steve possessed, and they like make eye contact, and it's kind of like flirty, and I don't know what they're going to do with that, but I don't think I like it. And then also in the end credit scene, like the OG Wonder Woman actress shows up, and she's the woman who wore the armor initially and saved all the Amazon. She like introduces herself as that. And like, that's cool, and I would be very curious as to where that might be going in like the third movie if I wasn't kind of thinking that this movie may have killed any chance of there being a third movie, and that's Wonder Woman 1984. So that was a lot. A couple final thoughts are in order. People are giving Pedro Pascal, I keep wanting to say Pascal, like a really hard time for his role in this movie and his acting in this movie, and honestly, like, they really need to stop. He was given a horribly written character with no interesting qualities and the most bastardly dialogue I have ever seen in my whole life, and he managed to make it fun. He was the only reason why I enjoyed this movie, and I was having the time of my life watching him play this character at a level 100 because it was the only thing that would have made watching this character at all interesting. Was it ridiculous and over the top and sometimes really stupid? Yes. Was there any other way to go about it when this is the material he was working with? No. Nobody in this movie deserves any kind of hate for their roles in this movie except for the people who wrote it. This whole movie was like watching a very preventable train collision in slow motion the entire time, just thinking like, oh my god, why didn't somebody stop this? But I knew it was going to be bad going in, so personally, I had the time of my life. Alright, one more thing before the end of this video. I just want to make everybody aware that this week there are protests going on nationally against sexual assault and the handlings of it that are done on college campuses and by college campuses. As such, I went to CU Boulder, that was my institution that I went to, and so I have reached out and I'm speaking up about my experiences and what I witnessed. And as such, if you would like to find more information, please try going to We Are USM. They have an Instagram page, and also you can follow the hashtags, and there's a lot of interesting information about everything that's going on right now and what people are advocating for change-wise. If you would like to check out my post, this is it. If you would like to help in any way, feel free to reach out. If you have any stories that you would like to share, I have a very small platform, but I would love to do anything I can to help you get those stories out. And if you just really want to read up, that helps a lot, honestly. So take your time, and I will provide all of the resources that I have in the links, and look through what you want to look through. That is all. I'm a nerd. This has been my blurb, and I will see you guys next time.
I'm not a great guy. In fact, I'm a pretty messed up loser guy.